Today's scripture reading is from the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verses 1 to 11. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay in bed. Then he wrote down the dream. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then, as I watched, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human being, and a human mind was given to it. Another beast appeared, a second one, that looked like a bear. It was raised up to one side, had 3 tusks in its mouth among its teeth, and was told, "Arise, devour many bodies." After this, as I watched, another appeared like a leopard. The beast had 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth and was devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that had preceded it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns when another horn appeared, a little one coming up among them, to make room for it. 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. There were eyes like human eyes in this horn, and a mouth speaking arrogantly.
What do you think about that? There is nothing more spooky than the things you can actually read in our Bible. This is weird and scary stuff. Lions with wings, a bear with 3 tusks who arise to devour many bodies, a leopard with wings also, but 4 heads, and finally, a 10-horned beast with great iron teeth that devours all the other beasts into pieces. Fire spewing, eyes on the horns, wings plucked off. What a thriller!
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize y'all's neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. Stench is in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
This part. Thriller! Did you know that came out almost 40 years ago? 39 years actually, November 30th, 1982. And it was a nightmare for a kid like me. So I hemmed and I hawed about whether or not you could actually handle this in church. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, of course, this proves my point. This is scary. It's a nightmare, yeah. But it's no more scary than our biblical passage here. Also a nightmare. So if you have problems with it, talk to me later, but I'm just going to pull out the Bible. We're going to have to talk. Literally, it was a nightmare because it was a dream. Daniel's dream. It's scary and confusing, and we don't fully understand it. It's not like the rest of the Bible, at least not most of it. This is not an account of real things, and it doesn't even pretend to be. It is fantastical and frightening. These 4 beasts that are stirred out of the sea by the 4 winds of the earth from north and south and east and west. It's like a hurricane coming in from all directions, rising these horrifying beasts that rip to devour the bodies. And you thought Thriller was scary. These monsters can go head to head with the scariest of Spielberg's and Hitchcock's creation. Yes, this book of Daniel describes a horrifying vision. Like other apocalyptic books, it uses dreams to convey a message, first to name the fear, and then to offer an answer. So as it turns out, these were not literal beasts. They had no more reason to be afraid of winged lions than we do today, but what those beasts represented are every bit as real as they were then. Every bit as frightening. You know, we tend not to read a lot of apocalyptic literature here. Have you noticed that? I think that's because it's so scary and we don't want to look at that. But I think it might also be because we associate it with the people who believe that the world is coming to an end. And they're always looking for signs, right? It's like, oh, that must be the sign of the beast. It's the credit card or the vaccine or Bill Gates. I don't know. They think the world is coming to an end. But the problem is not the literature itself. It's usually the interpreters, or more rather, the interpretation, right? I think we hear too many people who interpret this literally that we're just turned off by it entirely and we don't ever read it. But the reality is that apocalyptic literature is not written about our day and time. We're not going to find ourselves in it, except like all biblical literature, we can find meaning in Scripture that can be applied to our day and time, and we might even see a little bit of ourselves in it. But first, we have to do some work and find out what it meant in its day and time. So here's the thing. Apocalyptic literature is not written when times are good and people are prosperous and at peace. It is written during difficult times. During times that are so bad that coded language is the best way to convey a message of hope over and against all the messages of chaos and destruction being conveyed everywhere else. So the book of Daniel comes to us from the era of 165 BCE, before the Common Era, when Antiochus Epiphanes profaned the temple and tried to impose pagan religious practices on the Jews. We're a little bit more familiar, maybe, with the book of Revelation. Or at least familiar with people talking about the book of Revelation, right? And that's very similar because it causes a similar stir, but it comes later in the first century, pretty late in the first century of the Common Era, when Christians were being persecuted because they refused to worship the emperor. Now, both of these apocalyptic books had the same purpose. It was to tell this story and tell it in a scary way, to paint these images that are frightening, not to be taken literally, but to describe the events of the day with hope for the future. Today, I think we use the word apocalypse basically as just a reference to the end of the world. It's like some cataclysmic thing is going to happen that's going to blow everything up. We use it this way because we don't really understand the word apocalypse, and particularly the final book of the New Testament, which in Greek is called the apocalypsis, which means, as we translate it, revelation. And revelation itself, we know, is not about destruction. It's about understanding. So the literal meaning of the Greek apocalypsis is uncovering, which is from apocalypsis, from apo, kalupto. And I like to think about the relationship between apokaleo, which is calling out. Basically, this means it's a disclosure of knowledge, or, as we always translate it, revelation. So it's about revealing some knowledge from something that's hidden. That's what apocalyptic literature is. That's what Daniel is. That's what the book of Revelation is. In a commentary by Richard Neil Donovan, he writes, apocalyptic literature usually reflects a strong dualism, good versus evil. As we've already seen, it does this by painting dramatic pictures of fantastic creatures, visions filled with symbols. You got numbers, colors, animals, codes that must be explained or interpreted. There was a reason there were the 10 horns, and then the 3 horns went away, and the little horn came up, and the mouth came on, and it was speaking in scary, arrogant ways. All that has meaning. The good news is that this literature, for as frightening as it is, actually brings hope. There's a promise that will prevail because God will prevail and God's people will too. Now the question is, who are God's people? Because in a dualistic world, that really works, right? The good ones and the bad ones. So we know this. Apocalyptic literature is about interpreting a hidden message. We don't have to be afraid of real beasts coming to tear apart our world any more than we need to worry about vampires and boogeymen coming to suck our blood or jump out from underneath our beds. This is really good news, guys. We can celebrate Halloween. We don't need to worry about those monsters, but we do need to worry about the state of our world. And this is even scarier than fire-breathing winged monsters. In the book of Daniel, these monsters were likely the 4 kingdoms: Babylon, Media, Persia, and Greece. So we have to ask ourselves, who are the monsters today? It'd be really easy to pick out all those monsters today, right? Oh, we know who they are. Well, who are the monsters today? It does feel like the monsters are all around us. Like the chaos is there, that the winds are spinning and it's coming from all sides of the earth. And if we look up for even a moment, we're spun into it, stirred, unable to find any stable ground. It's gotten so bad. We are at war with each other. And we even use this language. We see it played out in so many ways. We also feel like we are in this battle for good and evil too, don't we? It's a polarized world out there. Things have gotten wildly out of control. It's really easy to play into the good guys and the bad guys game. This dualism of good and evil, the Davids and Goliaths, God's people and the beasts. But we have to think about our theology here. Because to tell you the truth, as easy as it is to think about the good guys and the bad guys, I don't believe that there's that good and evil. I think God created all of us good. And somehow we have to tap into that goodness that is, but we also have to name the evil in the world. We weren't created evil. We were created good. And yet, there is evil in our world. How do we name and hold all of that tension? Because I know this. We are not going to end it if we think that every Republican in our country is evil, and we're not going to do it if we think all the Democrats are either. The polarization is killing us. It's so hard because it is literally killing us. People are dying because of it all. We cannot demonize the anti-vaxxers, even though I admit I have a really, really hard time with them. We can't demonize the white man, even if he's benefited from his white privilege and he doesn't even know it. Yes, we need to address white privilege. We need to talk about male privilege. We need to name these things and call them out, but we cannot come out guns blazing when the truth is we want to disarm the guns. We want to disarm from the violence, from the anger, from the isolation, because otherwise the theys become the victim, whether they really are or not. We have to stay connected. In times of great polarization, we must resist the temptation to demonize, but we can't compromise our values. So how then will we be agents of change that don't demonize one another, but attempt to figure out how to move forward while we are living in these very scary times? Because they are scary times. It's a spooky Sunday, but it's not because it's Halloween. That's the fun part. It's because we know that there are terrifying things happening in our world, and it gets played out in our country, has devastating, detrimental effects upon our earth and our children. I was listening to NPR the other day, and they were talking about how younger people have this terrible pessimism, so much so that they really don't want to reproduce because they don't want to bring babies into this world. We have some heavy stuff to hold. So what do? Plug our ears and close our eyes? No, I think first we have to ground ourselves in who we are and not be defined by the chaos that surrounds us, not be reactive, because the winds are blowing. The hurricanes are roaring and the monsters come out. So we need to figure out who we are. Make sure we aren't the monsters. That very well could be. So what do we believe? How do we live out these truths and not get caught up in emotionalism of it all? That doesn't mean that we don't feel, because we must feel. We must feel one another's pains. We must empathize with one another's story, but we also must be mindful, not dominated by those emotions so that we become ungrounded, plucked up like those horns. Our faith can ground us. It must. We must be clear on what we believe so when we act, we will not act out of fear, but we will act out of love, out of strength, out of power, out of a deep understanding that God's got us. Not that God's going to do the work. I know I always wish that was the case, right? That God's just going to do the work and the monsters are going to come and pluck everything out and it's going to be fine. The monster's going to get rid of them. No, that's not it. That's not the Christianity we signed up for. God's got us, but God is going to hold us and empower us and encourage us and embolden us to do the work. And yes, it is hard work. I know it is. The easiest thing to do is fight the bad guys and think everybody's wrong and God's on our side and we're going to take down those monsters. But no. We don't get to take the easy way out. Because then all we're going to do is fan the fires and make more wind that creates more monsters to crawl out. Instead, we have to figure out a way to silence the winds. Because there in the silence is God. It's scary out there. It's loud out there. It's scary in here. I have to be honest, I am scared. When I think about it sometimes, I think about the devastation of the earth, I'm like, at my wit's end, I'm so scared. And I'm angry. I got to deal with that anger. I'm at risk of getting caught up in that vortex. So I'm just going to pause right now, and I'm going to pray and connect with our God and find my strength, and I'm going to believe and hope and know that you will too. So pray with me. God of all that is, the beasts rise up around us, and we look to slay them. But the moment we do, we realize that we see ourselves in the mirror. Help us quiet the beast. to ground ourselves in your love, to let go of fear and anger and act out of conscience, unreactive to the chaos around us, but confident, calmed, self-differentiated. Give us voice to speak truth to power, to use our power, to resist, to act, to comfort, and even live with the discomfort, but not to appease, to stand in power, even when no one stands with us. Because we know you, oh God, are with us. With us in the scary and frightening moments. With us. And we shall not be moved. Amen. Monsters, beasts, guns, bombs, viruses of all kinds. They'll try to tear us apart, but they won't. They'll try to frighten us into submission, but they won't. They will not anger us to retaliation. They will not silence us. For where is God in the chaos? Where is God in the hurricanes? Where is God when the monsters rise up? God is with us to comfort us and encourage us, to give us hope and to sustain us. God is with us, and we shall not be afraid. Amen.